Okay guys, we are back here, part 5 notes. I'm going to skim over these real quick. You can see what I have filled in, what I've got highlighted. Pause the video when you need to. Go back and listen to the video. It's on YouTube. It's public domain. Don't forget, you've got your test review. You have your fill in the blanks already. There's no essay question on this one, okay? And don't forget the items you really need to focus on for your cheat sheet. I'm going to cover all of these really quick, but really starting right about here with William Pitt and down. You need to look in your note in your book and fill in your notes from that. Just double check that you understand what's going on. This American Revolution stuff, this is stuff that you've had since grade school. You should know most of these things that are going on. I'll just go into a lot more detail from your book, okay? So the rest of this stuff here is what I'm going to get into today, starting with section 5, okay? Pay attention to your reading assignments as well. Those are important things that a lot of you I know are skipping over. This is one of those times that you probably need to go ahead and delve into it in your book, okay? All right, we're going to continue on with our social aspect of this unit that we're talking about. Talking about the urban class, upper class, the middle class. Middle class is a new class that's established during this time due to the Industrial Revolution and the onset of factories. Your urban class, the urban rich was visibly separated from the urban poor, meaning they lived separately, they lived distinctly different. The aristocrats lived in well-furnished homes. Modern sanitary facilities were unknown. Animals wandered the streets, and pure water was very rare. But because there's not pure water, you also have a lot of disease in the water. One of them was cholera. Your cities were described as a beautiful but also ugly place. You know, you got these establishments of these factories, these big buildings going up, you know, this kind of grandiose lifestyle, but at the same time, they're pretty gross and dirty. It was actually a lot cleaner to live in the countryside because you have a lot less people living side by side. All right, upper class, you got small groups of nobles. These are large merchants, large bankers, financiers, clergy, government officials, just the same type of people that we kind of have today as your upper class. There's a couple little differences, of course, with the clergy and things, but for the most part, it's similar to our same type of upper class, okay? You have your government officials. The upper classes controlled the political and economic affairs of the town. They governed the city through the oligarchy of a city council. You guys remember oligarchy from last year with your political science. Remember the whole Olive Garden scenario? If you don't, ask a classmate. Somebody in there's got to know what the whole Olive Garden thing is. But the definition of your oligarchy, of course, is your small elite of people that actually rule. The small group of people that are in complete control. It's kind of that scenario in high school, how you've got the preps and the jocks who kind of rule the whole school, in a sense, okay? They're the ones that kind of dictate the fashions, the way to act, the way to do certain things. All right, they're your little oligarchy of high school. Okay, middle class. Now, this middle class is the first type of middle class established, but it's not quite like our American middle class, okay? You've got merchants, tradespeople, bankers, professional people like lawyers, teachers, doctors. You know, today we'd say lawyers and doctors are in the upper class, of course. Teachers, probably the lower middle class. Their world was one in which earnings and savings of money enabled rapid social mobility and change in lifestyle. They portrayed the nobility as idle and themselves as willing to put their capital or money and energy into work. Many were owners of the factories and of wholesale and retail businesses. So if you're going to split this up, your upper class are the people who are made of money. They're always going to have money. Your middle class are the people who own the factories. And then, of course, your artisans and lower class are the people who are working in the cities, okay? I'm not going to read word for word on all this stuff. You can read it, fill it in. Your artisans are your shopkeepers, your wage earners, sometimes your butchers and fishmongers. They're the people who are butchers of fish. They go and fish, also like catch the fish, bring them to market, and sell them. And then all these people were members of the guilds. You'll need to know that's a start item. Guilds were not as politically powerful as they were in medieval times. Guilds remained strong in Central Europe, but not in Western Europe, and that's because of the rise of your middle class. You can see that in my notes there. These guild owners are definitely going to resist change. They do not like the factories because essentially that's taking money away from them. Okay, you can see where I've skipped. Keep going. Working women, this is muy importante. There's an all accept question about that. This is kind of one of those faux pas, like women are going to go into the work field. What? That's not really the norm for the time. They're supposed to be at home, giving birth to kids, taking care of the kids, wiping those kids' butts, feeding those kids, taking care of the man, taking care of the house, things like that, okay? Kind of like what I've been doing the last couple of days, actually. Anyway, working women. Single largest field was domestic services, of course, being at home. Assume they worked to supplement their husband's income. Most women did not work in the new technologies of farming, transportation, and manufacturing. That's a no-no for women. You know, today we don't have quite as many like, oh, that's a girl's job, that's a boy's job. I mean, we do, but now there's a lot so interchangeable, but back then it was a absolute no-no. Even for the longest time, women were really only allowed 2 jobs, and that was like a secretary. Okay, I could say 3. Secretary, a nurse, and teaching. And even some of those, like for the teaching in the 1800s, you couldn't even get married. You weren't even supposed to like be alone with a male. You would be considered, a little promiscuous if you're seen alone with a male, okay? All right, working women. Start item. Okay, moving on, part 6. Jews, of course, we've come back to this a lot throughout this semester. Jews are always going to be discriminated. They've always been discriminated against. They're going to continue being discriminated against. They're just that different person. They failed to convert to Christianity whenever Christianity was popular. It was the first monotheistic religion, so if you want to go quite back that far, that's really where kind of the hatred for the Jews came. It was not popular in the ancient time period to believe in one God. So for them to believe in that one God, they were the outcast already. And then, of course, with the crucifixion of Christ and the establishment of Christianity, they didn't convert, so they're looked down upon, and now they're going to be continued to look down upon. You need to know the definition of a ghetto there. I know we don't use it as that today, but really the technical definition for ghetto is where a separate area in town where Jews are forced to live. That's the original definition of that. I know today, not so much. And then here it says a minority group is forced to live, so it can even span to other groups of people, of course, okay? All right, know these other things here. Most lived in poverty. Laws kept them socially inferior to their Christian neighbors. Could not work in many occupations, like to be a teacher or guild member. Moving on, part 7. You got your 4 periods of European overseas empires. Your 4 periods are here, A, B, C, D. The exploration, mercantile empire, Europeans begin to rule indigenous people. That's the original people. Kind of like how here, United States, we kicked out the natives, killed them off, okay? And then decolonization of people who had previously lived under European rule. That's going back to the whole scramble for Africa thing. I'm not sure if I've talked much about that, but there for a long time, the European countries of France, Britain, even a little bit of Germany went into Africa and took over those lands and kept a hold of them for a long time. Even South Africa was owned by Britain up until the 1980s. Okay, this is a start item here too. European countries were able to dominate people around the world because of naval power and gunpowder. Part 8, breezing through. All right, mercantile empire, you need to know this. What's mercantilism? It's the command economy. It's a type of command economy. It's a system whereby governments heavily regulated foreign trade and commerce in hopes of increasing national wealth and a favorable balance of trade in acquiring gold and silver bullion. Just their treasure that they wanted. You don't need to know these necessarily for your test, but you got your fill in the blanks there. Here, home country was to control and administer the colonies. And then look on page 518, there is a test question on mercantilism. The French and the British are really going to battle back and forth with who can own the most empires worldwide. Major source of rivalry lay in the West Indies or the Caribbean. I don't have this highlighted here, but it is a start item. And then these are the profitable crops: tobacco, cotton, coffee, and sugar was the most important thing. You know, sugar was the commodity for nobles. Even Queen Elizabeth of England, she used sugar in a paste to brush her teeth, which of course now we know would also rot your teeth, but you know. Okay, part 9, you already did that worksheet yesterday on it. Hopefully you guys got that done. Those questions from that worksheet and from your quiz, I'll give that back to you tomorrow. Those are going to be heavily on your test, just like usual, and then all this new stuff. Okay, part 10, this is where it gets a little bit more traditional into our history stuff with some wars. Okay, you got the War of Jenkins' Ear. It's between Spain and England. You've got the West Indies. That was a hotbed of trade, rivalry, and illegal smuggling. Spain began to search and maintain coastal patrols and search English vessels for contraband. They would actually get onto those ships and double check to make sure they didn't have anything illegal. Of course, that's not going to go over too well because you got people who will do it kind of antagonizingly doing it to cause problems, and that's what's going to happen. You have an English captain named Robert Jenkins, whose ear was actually severed in a fight with the Spanish. His ear got chopped off, okay? They kept that ear, yes, kept the ear, and brought it to trial whenever he came to trial years later, and used it as like a piece of evidence. Like, yes, this happened to me. He got on there when he wasn't supposed to, demanded to see our cargo that did not have anything illegal on it, and when we allowed him to, well, we told him not to, then we eventually allowed him to, he chopped off his ear, okay? The English Prime Minister at the time was Robert Walpole. We've talked about him. He's going to declare war on Spain because of this guy's ear, all right? Okay, War of Austrian Succession. Talked about this already. Frederick II, King of Prussia, he's going to seize the Austrian provinces of Silesia that was underneath Maria Theresa. Remember talking about her? She was the first queen. She they had to pass that pragmatic sanction just to let her become queen, okay? It's going to shatter that pragmatic sanction, upset the balance of power. So I'll start right there. Go on, skip this little area here. Getting closer, guys. Stick with me. You got France that draws Great Britain into war. See, all these like little wars are happening all over the world, okay? By the way, I wrote this little chart over here for Austrian succession. You got Prussia against Austria. If Prussia declares war on Austria. You got France and Spain that help out Prussia, and Great Britain that helps out Austria. All right, France draws Great Britain into war. King Louis XV of France supported Prussian aggression against Austria. You got some bad decisions by Louis XV. Why? You need to know those. It's highlighted. It's going to help create a new powerful state called Germany. Germany could and did later attack France. Of course, we know how history goes there. Britain sided with Austria. France did not have the strength to fight a colonial war and a conflict in Europe. What's that mean? Remember, they're over here in what's going to become the U.S., fighting for territory over here. There's one there. They don't have enough resources to do both. France is going to side with Spain in its conflict with England. You've got the war that ends with a stalemate with the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. We talked about that very briefly, in which Prussia is going to retain Silesia. But Maria Theresa is going to retain it back years later. You need to know those start items. All right, let's skip over this diplomatic revolution. You got your fill in the blank there. Just read over it. You have this one start item here. There's a question just straight from that. Britain signed the Convention of Westminster with Prussia. It's a defensive alliance aimed at preventing the entry of foreign troops into German states. Remember, that was a new place at that time. Britain's going to help support him. Later on, Germany's going to go bite him in the butt, but you know, that's later on. Okay, going on. Origins of American Revolution and the 7 Years' War. 7 Years' War, also known as French and Indian War. Here, it's known as French and Indian War in the U.S., 7 Years' War over in Europe. You got Frederick II of Prussia, who invades Saxony, okay? I got this chart over here.